People do not need to be taught. They need to be reminded of their responsibility. And when I'm talking about people, I'm talking about adults, adults in the workplace, fully maturated adults who have the ability to discern the difference between what's right and wrong. And that quote right there reframes a concept called moral disengagement as a failure of ethical memory and not of ethical capacity. My name is Dr. Irby, and I am one of the co-founders of Irby Ethical Strategies. I am an industrial organizational psychologist, and my research focused on moral decision making, ethical leadership, procedural fairness, relationships inside of the workplace, and volunteer behaviors inside of the workplace. I've got over 30 years of experience of working with very large, complex organizations. And I am a retired veteran of the United States Army after serving 20 years. And so I want to introduce this idea that when integrity falters inside of an organization, trust collapses. I also want to say without trust, safety ceases. And without safety, voices are silenced. And without a voice, problems accumulate and people distance themselves inside of the organization. So when they start to distance themselves, you have no team chemistry, you have no group cohesion, and you have an exuberant amount of counterproductive behaviors that literally harm the organization's productivity, efficiency, effectiveness, and the overall mission. So let's look at what is moral disengagement. Moral disengagement is a psychological process by which people selectively deactivate their internal moral standards. They turn them off. They set their moral compass off to the side, which enables them to commit or condone unethical acts without feeling any guilt or self-censure. They can't stop themselves and they can't recognize that they're doing something wrong. So we look at the operational definition of moral disengagement, which is to the extent to which an individual endorses the statement. They actually endorse this. They're not actually engaged in it. But there are some individuals that say, yeah, this is cool. This is just the way we do it. This is just the norm. These types of morally disengaging behaviors can form or result in what we call moral injury. And a moral injury is a form of trauma on a spectrum of distress that can follow a morally transgressive event from perpetrators, witnesses, and victims, and is characterized by the persisting guilt, shame, or identity disturbance of the counterproductive behavior. And so what that means is that you could have a perpetrator that actually engages in the event. Maybe that individual didn't know that they were doing anything wrong when they were committing the act, because that's just the way things were. That's the status quo inside of the organization. They've always done that. We've always done it this way. My leaders exhibit these behaviors and they're successful, so I'm just going to go ahead and exhibit those modeling behaviors because that's just the way we do things. Or maybe you have individuals who are informed of the moral transgressives and they sit back and they do absolutely nothing. These individuals compromise their moral integrity because they have moral agency. They can discern the difference between what's right and what's wrong. But yet and still they sit on the sidelines and they remain silent. And then you have the victims. to where they feel powerless. Maybe there's some 18-year-old or some young employee who doesn't know the ins and outs in the reporting channels, and maybe they're not educated on what the rules of the game are inside of the organization, but they know that they've been hurt. And then you got leaders who sit on the sideline and they allow this to happen. And leaders who engage in moral disengagement cause harm through normalizing the transgressions, by the diffusion of responsibility, and by silencing those who want to speak up and betraying those individuals who they say they're going to protect, and then they retaliate against those individuals who speak up. Wow, that's powerful right there. And that really goes back to the aspect of when I talked about when integrity falters, trust collapses. And without trust, safety ceases. And without safety, the voices are silenced. And without a voice, problems continue to accumulate. And then people distance themselves and they leave your organization. Now we have no productivity. Now we can't provide quality of services. We can't produce the widgets. We have no parts to supply the supply chain with. So this is just the beginning, and we're going to talk about in a later video, in video 2, on how ethical leadership can prevent and manage the impact of moral disengagement by grounding themselves in ethical principles and exhibiting those modeling behaviors that are conducive with the organization's standard. Because that is what Irby Ethical Strategies is all about. Irby Ethical Strategies is helping you to dive deeper into these concepts of ethical leadership and organizational citizenship behavior. And what we want you to understand is that you do not have to do this alone. We can help you and your team to become better. That's what we want to do. We want to help you understand what your attitude is and to be able to ethically think based upon standards and elements. So go ahead and visit us at www.irbyethicalstrategies.com. Give us a call, give us an email, and let's have a conversation so that we can help you identify if you have any problems inside of your organization and see who can own them and how to fix them based upon proven practices. I look forward to talking to you.